what is our natural diet? Now I want to get the question right. Yeah. Because some people.
Sorry, I'm in the wrong class.
Yeah. Well, this fellow was suggesting that vegan or vegetarianism or whatever is our natural diet, right? That's what he was suggesting. And I just want to focus on the question because some people answer the wrong questions. They go out there and they say, look, I think this, you should eat this because it's healthier or whatever, and that's not the question. The question is, what is our natural diet? So let's try to focus on the question and not get into politics and opinions and, religion. Okay, so here's the question. As this fellow put it the other day, he says, the best way to get your health back is to go to your what? Natural diet. Raw vegan diet. Okay, that's what he recommended, and that's what he thinks our natural diet is. Okay, so that was our starting point. Now, one fellow did not answer that question, answered another question. I'm going to put it anyways because of
That's a bad example.
No, because of an issue that he raised I think we should touch upon. And the fellow said the following, okay, there we go. Says, eat everything raw. Okay, when you cook food, you destroy ingredients and they practically turn into garbage. Blah blah blah. Okay, there is a lot of oxygen in the blood, so we do not despise blood. It is life. Drink blood, and you'll be what?
Enriched.
Look, I can see to me too. Enriched with additional oxygen, etc., etc. Okay, so he recommended that you eat raw food. Okay. And
or the spiky canines to tear the heck out of apples.
That's the subject I found out this week as well. We got canines, unlike other animals that don't have them. And we'll get to that in a second here. But this is the issue here that I wanted to answer for this fellow, okay?
Natural diet, any food for the day. Whatever we find.
Is Kentucky Fried Chicken still open? Okay, so this is something that I just want to point out to this fellow. Number of sites with good evidence of fire per 10,000 years. Went out there and looked at all the sites that we found to date that show absolute proof or evidence of fire. And before 400,000 years ago, we have no sites. There are no sites that we can really put our hand in the fire for. The fire kind of, controlled fire here we're talking about, okay? Controlled fire because fires, I'm sure, our ancestors, Homo erectus and beyond, probably saw fire. They probably had forest fires and who knows what. But controlled fire, okay? When they say cooking, we're talking about from 400,000 years onwards. Okay, and you can see here the number of sites with good evidence of fire, the years in which these sites are found, and you can see that more and more sites are found as we get to the present. That's to be expected because obviously the farther back in time you go, the harder it is to show, that there was a fire. That doesn't mean that it wasn't there, it just means it's hard to show, okay? So those are the, in general terms, more or less so that you can get a ballpark figure on when we had controlled fire. Yeah, we're talking about cooking here, okay? Cooking meats. Before then, maybe there was a time where they cooked and we don't have evidence. And before then, we were just eating everything raw, apparently. Okay, now that's the general picture. Take it for what you want, okay? So the question is, back to square one, what is our natural diet? How do I want to get to that question? Well, I want to look at the evolution of man, for those people who believe in evolution, right? Even the Bible says that, the animals were made for man so he could, kill them and eat them, but that's a separate story. But here you have the situation where you say, well, what was our evolution like? How did we evolve as humans? Did we evolve as predators? Were we carnivores? Were we vegetarians, vegans, or whatever, or were we omnivores, which is another issue? And that's the issue a couple people raised here. Here we see it. One fellow says, human beings are omnivores. We need meat and veggies. Based on a study of ancient human skeletons, the ideal is about 60% animal, and again goes into, what is healthy and so on. We don't care about the healthy part. We just want to know, what is the evolution of our stomachs, you could say, right? Another fellow also says we are omnivores. And another fellow says humans evolved as carnivores. Ha, ha, ha. He didn't like that at all. And he says hunting and gathering, omnivorous diets began at the same time. Now, my point last time was that those spears, they were not used to hunt apples or pumpkins. Okay, they were used to hunt animals and probably defend themselves against other
It was
animals,
to hunt the
predators.
animals that had the apple in their mouths. That's what it
Yeah.
was.
In other words, I think for the most part we were carnivores. Okay.
For the most part, you think it's mostly, you'd say 60-40, like the thing said?
Okay, let's get into that. Are we omnivores? Are we vegetarians? Are we carnivores? Which one are we?
I think anyone would say we're omnivores. I mean, here's a question:
Yeah.
Can a cow digest meat?
Okay.
Can a lion digest lettuce?
And that's because that's their evolution. Now we can eat
We can
both,
eat
right?
both, so
Yeah.
it stands to reason that we're omnivores.
Okay,
by
but
definition.
is that how we started? Because now we're talking about millions of years. What is our history? That's what we're looking at. That's what I'm going to go into in a second here. Okay, so
Is eating habit a specialization?
or
I guess.
opportunity.
That's a
How
good
we
question.
evolved, we just
What I mean is,
we squatted that niche.
are
you know?
all animals omnivores when they start their species and then they specialize into carnivorism and then forget one
I
or the
think
other? Or is it the other way around, that they start as a carnivore or a herbivore and grow into an omnivore?
Well, let's find out because man's going to answer that question. Okay, let's look at man. Okay, here we have humans. Okay, more or less. Now you don't have to believe exactly that this is what happened. These are assumptions. Okay, in general, this is our, you could say, state of the art knowledge. We came from some kind of monkey. Okay, we'll call him Australopithecus. We went through Homo habilis, a man who started using tool or some human-like creature, some hominid, right? Homo erectus, you see the dates there at the top. Then we went to Rhodesiensis in Africa. In Europe, he was called Heidelberg. Okay, more or less that's the same stage. And then we ended up about maybe 200 to 300,000 years ago with Homo sapiens, which is what we are today. Okay, so that's more or less the evolution. Okay, the big picture. Fire, I put it on modern human, but you could say maybe up to 400,000, maybe even Rhodesiensis, Heidelberg, they probably used fire. Okay, in other words, controlled fire. This is the general picture. Okay, and that's what I'm going to use as an assumption. Okay, now as you can see here, we started out as as herbivores and fruitivores. We ate fruits and veggies at the beginning, perhaps, and maybe took advantage of some kill by some other animal and started eating meat, and that's how we became omnivores. You already have this individual, this proto hominid, you could say, Australopithecus, and he was already an omnivore towards the end of his existence. And in other words, he went from herbivore to omnivore. Homo habilis was also both an omnivore. He ate both veggies and meat. Probably took advantage of kills out there and lost the ability to climb trees like other monkeys can do today. Why? Because he probably felt more or safe enough to be, on the plains. And as you move along, you go to Homo erectus. He was a hunter. He was a meat eater. And this fellow lasted for the next 2 million years, if we count all the way to us, and assuming we evolved from Erectus, right? So we're talking about, a meat eater here. He's a carnivore.
This is
He's
a good point, actually.
okay. And then
When
let me finish.
Okay, okay.
Then we have Rhodesiensis, and again he starts about maybe 800,000 years ago. He evolves from Erectus, and again we're talking about Heidelberg here in Europe. And both of them, they were meat eaters, net meat eaters. In fact, Neanderthal, who descends from Heidelberg, is considered to have eaten 99% of his diet being meat. It was probably 100%. I don't know if he ate any nuts or berries or any other thing. And eventually we ended up with our humans today. And what are we? Well, we're moving from carnivore to omnivore, back again. And
There seems to be a consensus in the chat that, no, keep that there.
Okay.
There seems to be a consensus that we're always omnivores. In fact, there's even comments that are saying what I was about to say. How we weren't always the best at hunting. We were kind of more prey-y. So we couldn't really rely on eating meat because we weren't so good at hunting. But as you become more and more the dominant species, the what do you call it, apex predator,
Right.
then
Then you
it,
become a
it
carnivore.
allows you to be a carnivore.
Yeah, and that's really the point here. The point is that even though Homo erectus and rhodesiensis were omnivores to some degree, I can't say that they were full, 100% carnivores. The amount of veggies that they ate, or fruits, or whatever, was a very small part of their diet, and that's what I'm going to get to next. And one of the ways we can show this is looking at Neanderthals. Okay, here we have the diet of Neanderthals. Okay, and this is what they came up with. They said, look, Neanderthals ate about 70% of what they ate was mammoth. They loved to hunt mammoth. On the other hand, in comparison to hyenas, they apparently chased after horses. They love the run, whereas the Neanderthals love the close quarters fighting against the mammoth. And you can see the black lines there. Those represent the Neanderthals. The white ones represent the hyenas. This is one study, okay, and it shows that Neanderthals really like to eat quite a bit of meat. And I did see an article once. I don't have the reference or anything, but it said 99% of Neanderthal diet, because of when they did the analysis of their bones, they concluded it was 99% of their diet was meat. I have to assume that as an apex predator, humans were perhaps at the same level, at least as long as Homo erectus and rhodesiensis were around. We're talking about anywhere from 2 million to about maybe 300,000 years ago. During that period of time, you're talking almost 2 million years, we were primarily carnivores. Okay, and that's where we, developed
Got our vampire.
Yeah,
fangs.
we got our vampire. Yeah, I mean that shows you that we're not. If you look at the teeth of animals who are like cows and whatever,
They're all flat.
yeah, they're all flat. So they don't have that.
Do you think we
We have
dream?
canines.
Do you think we dream what the animal lived in its life when we eat them? If we eat a deer brain, do we dream the deer's life?
Well, I do sometimes.
Yeah, it's fact.
Okay, so but for this you need to look at a little bit of the Neanderthal evolution, and I made this map. It's in my book, the Neanderthal book, and it's the Homo erectus empire. These are just big pictures, okay? In other words, very, very general, and some of the dates have to do with some of the finds they had out there. And all I want to show here is that Homo erectus started originally in Africa, moved out to Asia and also to Europe, and by about 800,000 years ago, he ends up in England, merry old England. Okay, that's the only thing I want to show, that Homo erectus already had gone as far as England. And what you need to understand here, and where we got that information, and here we have it. Okay, give me a second here. This is England about 800,000 years ago to about 220,000 years ago. It was united to France, to the continent. There was no English Channel. And so all these monkeys, could be Erectus, could be Antecessor, which was found in northern Spain, could be Heidelberg, because you're talking about 800,000 years ago. Could be any of those, some kind of creature at that level. And they lived in that, you could say, northwestern part of France, which united with England. About 220,000 years ago, the English Channel was created, and those tribes, clans, whatever, those people that were stuck in England eventually died off. And all we have from them is these sites that you can see there, Pakefield and Boxgrove and so on, and you'll see some of the dates there, like Happisburg is 800,000 years ago, and they found flakes, they found footprints, okay, and so we think that there were human-like hominids living in that region, okay. And the question is, you can see the glaciers are, in other words, the settlements, the sites that we found are all along the glacier that was extending all the way south into England. And so the question is, how did these monkeys live? Did they have clothes? Did they...
Better have. They're freezing their asses off.
Well, you would think so, but that's not the case.
I do think so.
Does the wolf put a coat on? Does the
He brought his
polar
own.
bear use
He also brought his own.
yeah, we had also a woolly rhinoceros that eventually became extinct, woolly mammoth, so all these animals, they lived in the north. And how about the woolly man?
True.
That's what these people were. If Homo erectus did not control fire, we could assume that they did towards the end of their reign, but certainly not at the beginning. And we find them 800,000 years ago in England, next to the glaciers. You would have to assume that this animal, this hominid, he was nude, covered
Why
only
would you
by.
assume that he's nude?
Well, he had no clothes. So the question.
Well, yeah, if he didn't have clothes, but that's a
He had no shoes. He was stepping on the snow, etc., 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 etc. Just think about it. It's like a wolf. The wolves sleep in the snow, and you say, how can a dog sleep in the
would woolly
snow?
man have been a better name for them?
Maybe true, but then you would have several woolly men from
Yeah.
Erectus, Heidelberg, and
I mean, there's
Neanderthal.
still people we know who are very woolly. They have hair on their backs and
Yeah,
shit.
they're known as Armenians.
Yeah, they can make it through the winter, no problem.
Okay, so here are the Neanderthal sites. The official one is the one that you see, the long one there, the big train tracks. I put the red line there because I don't think that the ones on the east side are Neanderthals, especially not the ones in Israel. I don't think there were any Jewish Neanderthals, okay, riding camels. Neanderthal was an animal or a hominid that lived in cold weathers, not in the hot weathers. I don't think Neanderthal ventured south. So, I disagree with that map that they put out there showing that Neanderthals extended all the way to Israel. And I do argue, and I think with good reason, that several analysts, I'm not an analyst of bones, I just read what they wrote, okay? And what they wrote is that the Neanderthals, the alleged so-called Neanderthals of Shanidar in Iraq and some of the others in Israel, are notably different than the classical Western Neanderthal of Germany, Spain, and France. And so they've noticed differences, and that's why I'm saying that maybe we're not talking about the same creatures or the same clans. I don't think they were Neanderthals. Some other creature that was there. Okay, but the point here is the following. Here we have the Neanderthals. That was probably their last stand they made in southern France and probably most of Spain, especially down south in Gibraltar. Okay, maybe that's where they made their last stand. A couple of people argue for that. I more or less agree with them. I think that's probably where we'll find the last, or the latest Neanderthals, right? And this is, in general terms, the path of humans. We started as Rhodesians, Homo rhodesiensis, way down south. Now, the itinerary there is not to be taken literally. In other words, what I'm showing there is simply that there was a movement of humans from Africa into Europe and arrived in Europe maybe around 40,000, maybe 35,000 years ago. And I'm saying by that time the Neanderthals were gone. But the Neanderthals, two things. First, they didn't wear clothes. They didn't have any need for clothes because they had an evolution from Heidelbergs and before them from antecessors, before them from Erectus, all of which already lived in cold climates. Second, I think 99% of their diet was meat. And I think humans were at that time at the same level. We were primarily meat eaters. Did we eat veggies? Probably did so, but maybe veggies was a very, very small part of our diet. In general, what we ate was meat, and I think that's what we used the spears for, to kill animals. Okay, live one more day. Okay, so here's a study. This is a modern day study of hunter-gatherers that are still around today. Okay, but keep in mind, we're talking about hunter-gatherers of today. They're not so hunter, not so much gatherers as you're talking about.
They gather more corpses.
Well, you can't compare them against the hominids of the Paleolithic. That's what I'm saying. Okay, and this is the study. Okay, this is I guess one of the charts there, and it shows that approximately 70 to 75% of these modern day hunter-gatherers is primarily meat, and there's only about maybe 25 to 30%, which is veggies and maybe fruits, non-meats. Okay, that's the general picture. But again, the author of that is this fellow here. Cordain, and he said the diets of modern day hunter-gatherers. Okay, so he makes that clear. Okay, and consumed high amounts of animal food. Okay, again, we're talking about today, right? Most 75% of worldwide hunter-gatherers societies derive greater than 50% of their subsistence from animal foods, whereas only 14% of these societies derive greater than 50% of their subsistence from gathered plant foods. Okay, but again, we're talking about modern day and not how we evolved. Okay, this is there's another way of showing where we stand today. Are we omnivores? Absolutely. In fact, we can almost call ourselves vegetarians and not carnivores anymore. Here are the numbers. Okay, these are the tons of meat produced and sold in the world today. I think this is an objective statistic. Okay, 340 million tons of meat. That's how much we produced in 2018. The numbers have changed relatively little to today. Okay, in contrast, we have 2 billion tons of grains and 1 billion tons of veggies.
I'm pretty sure that has to do with the economy.
Well, the point here is that we produce this, some of it goes to feeding animals, but the point here is that you have a 10-to-1 ratio between veggies, if we lump them all together, right? Veggies and meats. There's a 10-to-1 ratio. That's how much we consume on Earth. And so...
More than 10,000 to 1.
It's a 10-to-1. It's a
340 million to
no, yeah,
2 billion?
to 2 billion
Oh,
and
man.
1 billion. Well, 2 billion grains, 1 billion veggies, a little more, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a 10-to-1 ratio. You have 3 billion versus 300 million. So you have a 10-to-1 ratio. We are essentially vegetarians today. We've gone back to being omnivores, but more on the veggie side. And I think that if you go back to those millions of years in which, maybe 2 million years, in which humans evolved, and we evolved our fangs, right?
Now we use them to chew rice.
Yeah. I think we evolved our guts and everything to eat meats originally. So, but now we're changing that and we're going back to veggies. Where did we start that? With the agricultural revolution. You're talking about the Neolithic, maybe 10, 15,000 years ago, maybe a little more. We started eating veggies again. And
more
and
practical, I guess.
well,
Cheaper.
not only that,
All
it's
that.
that you can feed more people
Yeah.
or produce, it's more efficient to feed people with,
It's peasant food. That's what you
Purina
say.
Man Chow than it is to feed them with meat.